like. But another thing that I want to do now, I think, is go back over here and maybe to the B tab. And I'll just do, for example, I'll just put a rock here just to kind of block the player off a little bit. And maybe one here as well. Actually, no, we don't need one there because we got the tree. So the tree does it for us there. But what I want to do is set up an event to where the player knows they don't need to go this way. So that they don't need to go to the left here. Because what I want to do at this point is force the players to go to the right. So how I'm going to do that is set up just some kind of dialogue thing. So we'll do an event here. And we'll do new. Right click and do new event. And we want this one to be below characters because we want them to be able to step on it. And I'll show you a movement control thing here too. So I want this to be kind of an internal monologue sort of line. So I'm going to do show text. And I'm going to do dim. And I'll leave this one at the bottom. And this is just going to say something like, this is the way that I came during my trip. I'm headed to the town of Monsteropolis. It's to the east of here. I'll just capitalize east if I'm really doing that right. I have no reason to go back the way I came. Alright, so it's just something like that. Just a simple message. Maybe I'll change this a little bit so we're not repeating the words. So clearly I'll just I have no reason to go back right now. Okay, so maybe it's something that would change in the future, whatever. So this gives the player some direction, kind of guides them. And then the other thing I wanted to have it do is actually guide them away from it. So the priority is below characters. Now we want to change the trigger from action button to player touch because we want this to show up right when the player steps on that spot. So now what we want them to do is kind of point them in the right direction from there. So what we're going to do is we're going to hit the right mouse button and do new. Go in here. And now we are going to go to the second tab, I believe it is. Where is it? Somewhere. Set movement route. There it is. So this says it forces the player or event to move. If a route already exists, it will be overwritten. So here, this is about the same thing as what we would do in the autonomous movement if we went to custom. It gives you the same screen here. But this one, we want it to set it just for the event versus, all the time. Autonomous movement is if you want it to do it right from the start. But for this is for the player, we want them, we want it to move the player just this one time when they talk about this situation here when they step on this event. So up at the top left here, we see it says player. By default, this is affecting the player. It says character to be assigned the movement route. So you can also do player. You can do this event. So if we wanted to move, event ID number 58 here, we could use this event. Or you can also have movement routes to control specific events on your map. So since we've copied and pasted a ton of events on this map already that are just, sitting there as dummies basically to block the player, we have a lot of events going here. But if you wanted to control a specific one, fine tune, maybe you wanted to move, one of the empty spaces out of the way or whatever, then you would go in here. You would go into that event, find what the name of it is, whatever you named it, and then you can manipulate it directly from here. So, but for now, we just want to move the player. What we want to do is we want to move them to the right. In this case, now you can see it did move right over here. So you can do move right a bunch of times, and that'll move the player right that specific amount of times. And you can just come back in and either right click and do delete, or you can just hit the delete key on the keyboard and it deletes out extra ones. But in this case, we just want to point them from going to the left. We want to point them back to the right. So we just are forcing them to take one step back to the right. So now down here on the bottom, we've got some options. It says repeat movements, which if you check that box, it'll say after running all the commands, returns to the top of the list. So there's definitely situations where you would want to do that, especially if you're having things be cyclical in their nature. You want them to repeat over whatever they're doing. Then you would do one set of things, like maybe you wanted to move down after, and then move to the right, and move to the left, and move up. So you can do that, like down, left, up, right. And then if you did repeat movements, they would go down one, go left one, go up one, go right one, and then they would repeat that. Go down one, go left one, go up one, go right one. And they would just keep repeating that over and over and over. So, that's just not a very good example maybe, but that's what that would be for, and you could have them repeat certain things. So we have the skip if cannot move option. It says skips any command that would move a character into an impassable location. So if you had them, say, move to the right a bunch and they got stuck here, it would skip the rest of the command. So it's useful if, well, I don't know, it's one that I don't use as often, to be honest, because you start getting kind of messy if you use. I prefer, if I'm going to manually control something anyway like this, I prefer to make sure that its movement path is clear and you won't have to worry about skipping things. But if you ever get in a situation where you've got it here and then you want it to maybe go down regardless of whether you've pressed it, gotten enough move rights in there, then you can have it skip all the rest of the move rights and go to move down or something like that. So I can't think of a good example off the top of my head to use skip if cannot move, but there are situations where you would want to do that. So by default, it has this last one here. It says wait for completion. It says wait for the movements to finish. So you generally want to have that there. If you don't, then and where if you don't have that checked, where that'll mostly be useful is if you want something to happen while the player is also moving. So if you're moving some other event, maybe another character or something, and it doesn't matter to you if the event's complete or whatever before the player leaves the screen or whatever, then maybe you don't have to wait for the completion. And there's another reason too, is that sometimes if you have to wait for completion, like a character might get stuck or not move or whatever, and then it could kind of like lock up your game to the point where it's like you're waiting for something to resolve and then it never does. And then, so it could be, there's definitely some times where you might want to not have this checked. But for this instance, when we just want them to move to the right and we definitely want to wait until they're done moving to the right all the way, we leave it checked. It's pretty good to leave that there. So I'll just briefly go over, overview of some of these movement commands. The basic ones, you can move in directions. Here, you move lower left, move lower right, move upper left, move upper right. Actually moves you in diagonal directions, which you don't normally get to do. So that's one way you can do that, which is kind of interesting, I think. Move at random, that's basically like setting the movement type to random. Move toward the player, move away from the player, take one step forward, one step backward. Jump will have them actually do a little jump animation. This is jumps from the current position. So you can have them jump, and if you do, you can see this little window here that says offset X and Y. So your X position, it says the horizontal offset, and your Y position is the vertical offset. So you can actually have them jump, like say they're right here, you can go X to the 3 spaces over, and they would jump 3 spaces like that. Or you can do 0, 0, and they'll just jump in place, that sort of thing. So it's interesting to play around with. You can make some cool little scenes and stuff. Wait is something that's useful. It says wait for a specified amount of time. So here it says frames 1 for 1/60th of a second. So 60 frames with the default duration, that's 1 second basically. So if you wanted to make them wait 2 seconds, you would change that to to 120, so on and so forth. There's a maximum, I believe it's 999 if I'm remembering right. But if you need to wait even further, you can just do multiple waits and just chain them, like 3, 4 waits in a row, whatever. So, it's one of those weird things where it's like they have a cap on it, but they kind of don't, because you can just keep having it wait. So here we've got turns. So if we just want the character to change the direction that they're facing, but not, not actually move from the spot that they're at. We can use the turns, same with the 90 degrees and the 180. And it just turns, different amounts. Turn 90 degrees right or left, randomized, turn 180, so it turns all the way around. Things like that. Turn towards player, away from player. And then here we can actually control switches too. So you see a switch on and switch off. So if in the middle of your movement route you need to do something with switches, you have controls over those as well in here. So it's pretty powerful what you can do just in this movement route section here. So you can change the speed and frequency of your player or their characters or whatever you're moving. You can turn the walking animation on or off and the stepping animation. Direction fixed, you can turn through, and here's what I was talking about before in the previous video, where you can turn through on and turn through off temporarily, as part of the movement route. So you can, instead of using the checkbox down here and having them be through all the time, you just temporarily do it, a little bit through here. Transparency, you can make the character transparent, so they don't make the character invisible, so that, so they don't show up, and then later they can again. There's a lot of useful uses for that. You can change the image that's being used for the character. So if you want to change the character on screen to look some other way, you can do that. Different image graphic, or maybe like if you have multiples of the same character in just like different clothes or something, different outfits, you can change it that way. Changes the opacity. So that'll make them not completely invisible like the transparency, but if you want them semi-transparent or whatever, you can do that. Blend mode, we haven't really talked about that too much, but what that does, I'll just show you the options here. We've got normal blend, additive, multiply, and screen. So let me see what it says on the tooltip here. It says blend mode used when the characters are on. Okay, well, it doesn't really show you, but anyway, these are ways to make things look a little bit different. Additive tends to make your character look really bright colored, like it's a lot of bright glowing effects, and usually like more white color sometimes, but multiply kind of does the opposite, where it tends to make them darker looking, like a lot of shading and shadowing, and it's kind of hard to describe. We'll play around with that at some point probably. And then screen makes screen is kind of close to like opacity, changing it to where they look kind of semi-transparent and they sort of blend into the background and stuff. So you can play around with that stuff, though. It's good to do with, like, maybe some monsters or something if you want them to look really weird. Like, I remember in my really old game back in RPG Maker XP that I was making, I had these, like, ghost-like characters that I would show up on the map, and then with them I would change their, the blend mode to, like, additive to make them, like, glowing white, or, screen to make them, like, hard to see, and then you can mess around with the opacity and change it gradually, and, have them go from invisible to visible, and things like that. I did a whole bunch of weird little things with that, but and then one other thing here, play sound effects. So if you want to have certain sound effects going on while you're moving around, you can do that. And then script, it says evaluates text as JavaScript. So and that's one thing I haven't talked about yet, but RPG Maker MV uses JavaScript for its scripts, and earlier versions used Ruby, the Ruby programming language for their scripting. So, but if you have a script that you actually can call in here and evaluate, it says evaluates, but basically if you have a script that you can run, and it'll usually tell you, like, put this in a script box in your movement root or whatever. Then it'll tell you, what to do. It just gives you a blank box, and you would type in a command here that's related to your individual script that you're trying to use. So anyway, that's a general overview of all the things you can do to move. It's pretty powerful and capable. You can really play around with all these and experiment, and you're probably not going to hurt most things, just like playing with the movement options and the jumps and all that. So, experiment on your own time with those for sure, in case we don't get to all of them in our various videos here, but we'll look at more of this in the future for sure, because this is just a very simple movement here. So I'm going to hit OK, and now we can see here it's going to display a message at the bottom of the screen. It's going to be dim window option, and then after that it's going to set the movement for the player, to move them one space to the right. So, and we've got it triggered to be player touched, and we've got it below characters so they can step on it. So I hit OK, and I'm just going to copy and paste this using the arrow keys all along the actual path here. So that way it covers all of it. No matter where the player walks on this road, they are going to have this message take place. And anytime you use a movement thing, you got to just make sure that you don't have anything in the way. Like, we're moving to the right, so it's going to put the player back on this line here. And we don't have anything obstructing the player at any of those points. So that's what we want. Because otherwise you'll start running into issues if you had something in the way. If something was in the way for whatever reason, then it might, lock up your game a little bit because they, say it was here on accident or something. I don't know, whatever. Or if this tree was, moved over a little bit and then you walked here and it's like, oh, well, I can't walk back now and it's trying to move right and it can't. So anyway, so what this should do is walk here. Here's our message. It says, this is the way that I came during my trip. I'm headed to the town of Monsteropolis. It's to the east of here. I have no reason to go back right now. So it'll display that message, wait for the player to click a button, and then you see it moved us one to the right. So now, no matter what, it's just going to repeat that. And now, by moving it one to the right, it kind of shows the player like, hey, go this way, in case it isn't clear that, north is up and east is right and south is down and west is left, So that's how you would do something like that, and then that's all it takes. Just a simple example of redirecting the player, and then it doesn't really matter that we have all this empty space or that we don't have anything else going on over here. It prevents the player from going the wrong direction that you didn't want them to go, and it gives some kind of plot related reason why you're not going that way. So you can do stuff like that. Other things you see a lot of times is like, there'll be a bridge or something maybe, and it's being repaired or something, and you can't go there. Or maybe it's like there's somebody's cart spilled their cargo or something, and it's all over the road, and they have to clean it up. And you can think of a bunch of different examples to how that would make sense to direct the player. But this is just one off the top of my head that, I want to direct the player over to this right side instead rather than having them go, anywhere where you don't want them to go. So, okay, so I think, what else do we need to do? We need to make our transfer events. We never did that. So we'll go ahead and do that really quick. Quick event creation transfer. You're going to get sick of seeing this eventually, I'm sure, but it's just kind of how this goes. So now with this one, since we have the 4 spots here that I'm going to make into the transfer events on this side, but since they can't really walk this way so much, I guess they could, but I'm just going to actually funnel them inside here, which is a little different than how I normally do it. And this time, since it's open on either sides here, and we could have done this back on the clearing map, actually, I noticed too. I didn't do it there, but since this one is so open on the bottom, players could easily come from the right side here and the left side. I'm actually going to specify here to point them down when they're done with this. So, and I'll show you what that does in a little bit. So I'm going to copy this, and I'm actually going to just paste it straight over for here, because with this one, oops, wrong thing. This one, it actually went into this. So this one is going to here, and this one is going to here. So, and I'm going to do the same on this side. So you really only need to have 2 different ones on this one, the way I did it. And all that is just to kind of point you inside towards the bridge a little bit better. So I'm going to copy this, paste it here, open it up, edit, click this, and then just move it over to that spot. And then again, the advantage of copying it is that it still has the direction of down. You don't have to start over from scratch again there. So copy and then paste it again. And now I will show you how that works in just a second. And this one, yeah, it's pretty fine, because I was going to say this might be a little bit of an issue, but it's not, because they can't go past here. But then remember, we have this part the sign right here blocking the player from moving this way. So the only way they could access this is by going up, and same with this because the rock's there. So this one we'll use retain, just like we did before. Quick event creation, transfer. The most monotonous option that we have. And now that we have the ability to go to all four, I'm going to do it the right way. So I know that's probably not what you wanted to hear, but but there it is. So just for, we could just do it up, and you can get in the habit of doing it that way. That's fine. It's like if you for sure want to know, yeah, they're pointing up when they come out of here, then you can just get in the habit of doing it, and you never have to use retain. So it's up to you. But I'm just going to paste these over really quick and go back into each one, change the coordinates, point it there. Okay. And go again. Change the coordinates one more over. Hit OK. And change this last one. And then I'll show you how that works without the retain. I mean, you can probably visualize it anyway, but. Okay, so let's do player test. Or play test rather, not player test. And then we'll go back in here really quick. And now you can see, even if I come at it from this side, way over here, and the player's facing to the left right now, they can access this event. But because we specified, hey, go down, it points you down. So that's when you want to use that. And like I said, I probably should have set that up for the clearing as well, but I didn't think about it at the time. So, and then we've got all this, and they're both pointing back into the middle ones. So there we go. We can't go past that. So there. Now we're good with the events, and maybe next time we'll fill in a little tiny bit more grass and stuff on this one, but then from there I'm going to go to the next map leading to the city, I think. So thanks for watching, everybody. Hope you're enjoying as you follow along with this tutorial and learning a few little tricks and things. And I appreciate your patience while we go through some of the more boring parts of it, but I'm trying to give everyone a realistic look. Like, hey, if you're going to make a game with this thing, this is literally what it's going to look like. This is what you have to do, There's going to be parts that are monotonous and a little bit, most people would call it boring or tedious, but, but that's what you're in for when you're working on games. So it's a lot of time that you got to put into little things. So anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next part.